Hey, I am 50% through Blonde by Joyce Carol Oates, and I figured I'd do a little check in there. There's a picture of the actual Norma Jean Marilyn Monroe. This is most definitely a fictionalized Norma Jean, um, which I mean it is a really well written novel. Like Joyce Carol Oates is, I guess, not surprised. I've This is the first Joyce Carol Oates novel that I've actually read, but she's a really good author. And this book, it's a long one. I'm only, as I said, like I'm halfway through, and that probably puts me at like 350 pages of stuff. And it's like, oh, I'm not, I constantly gripping, constantly engaging, constantly kind of doing kind of really interesting stuff with this figure of Norma Jean and her creating uh, this Marilyn figure, and having, like, earlier in life, having her magic friend in the mirror who she can kind of who she sometimes is. Um, it's I do struggle with the fact that it's an actual person, and there's other persons. Like, there's a kind of a core thing here that's been core, at least for the last while, of her relationship, a threesome between her, Cass Chaplin, Charlie Chaplin Jr., and Eddie, who is Edward G. Robinson Jr., two sons of great Hollywood stars who, maybe significantly went on to write memoirs about themselves and their fathers. But um, this entirely fictional threesome that they had, and this being kind of a point of kind of happiness in her life, in a way. Um, Interestingly, like a dynamic between two guys who are maybe more like into each other than they are into Marilyn. Marilyn seeming, or Norma Jean, she having maybe the most intense affair with this camera, with this phallic camera thing. Um, but it's like, you know, she's Joyce Carol Oates has imagined an entire kind of relationship, an entire kind of dynamic of these all three actual people who, it seems, it's entirely fictitious. She reorders events. Apparently by this point, Joe DiMaggio, her second husband, would have been in uh, the picture, but isn't at this point. Um, so I mean, you have to take the whole thing as a fiction, as a imagining, as a Joyce Carol Oates taking this figure, this maybe figure, one of the figures um, of an American screen goddess, as Marilyn Monroe standing, with her skirt blowing up, laughing, as sort of as her thing. So yeah, I'm just kind of, I'm dealing with that. I mean, I dealt with that before in stuff like, Amadeus, Milos Forman's telling of the relationship, very completely fictionalized relationship between Salieri and Mozart. Um, and Salieri being the murderer of Mozart, that being complete utter bullshit. But is the legend that a lot of people know Salieri for, or would even, like, that's because of how much knowledge I have of music. That's the only way I know him. And, like, yeah, I made a point of not going and reading biographies of Norma Jean Marilyn Monroe before going into this book, because I knew that it would be like, but it's unavoidable. You start going like, well, how much, like, this threesome, how much of this is actually known? Like, I think it was like, oh, there was pictures of them, and charges of it being a threesome in the paper, recorded in the novel. But and looking that up and finding articles saying, like, yeah, Joyce Carol Oates just made all this up. Um, and that in itself is the thing. It's just like, it's all bullshit. It's all illusion. It's all made upness. Um, and yet at the same time, Marilyn, Norma Jean, as an artist, she came up with this bullshit, but it's when it's art, um, fiction becomes the truth. It gets somewhere. It takes you somewhere that a strict nonfiction accounting of Marilyn's life would not take you. Marilyn's life, Norma Jean's life, would not take you. Um, I mean, her Norma Jean is an artist. You know, I think the movie that there is a movie of this now, which I have not watched, but I heard a lot of criticism about it, and a lot about that seems to be it was torture porn for a Marilyn. It was coming up with just bad, horrible stuff about Marilyn. It didn't give her any sense of agency or anything like that. And this Marilyn is she is kind of she is gripped by her own past and stuff like that, but she also is someone who is very much forming stuff and needs to get things right. I have to do as many takes as it takes me to get things right. I know what is right. Let me rewrite these lines. These are the wrong lines for this character. Um, a part of this is like kind of in the era of a method acting, but she's like really, really good at that, and really captures also just this sense of uh, the the male the male gaze and its kind of savage, merciless lust and yearning, and her being caught up in the whirlwind of that, but also manipulating that, but also being caught up in that, the studio heads, and her depicting her being raped by a studio head, and it's one of those things of like I can take that as there's no documentation of that, or maybe there is, I have no idea, but I can take that as even if it wasn't her, it was others. It was prevalent. We live in the age, a post Harvey Weinstein age, and we know that this is uh, the culture in Hollywood, the culture in general of patriarchal society where males are put in positions of power and have used that over females for their own gain. Um, those males who get to that part, and then there's the rest of us males underneath that who are equally as fucked by this system as well, not but are differently fucked by the system than the females in it. Um, so yeah, it's a really, really good book. Joyce Carol Oates is just like, she starts off the how it starts off just kind of like, oh, okay, we're in this, we're deeply in this. Uh, uh, Norma Jean is reading the Diary of Nijinsky, which I tried, God, a while ago. I tried to read that, and this has really got the flavor of that in a way. It's funny. There's Nijinsky. There is oh fuck, who's the poet? Because I could not stop for death. Kindly stop for me. There's a couple of artists who are in there that I think Joyce Carol Oates very kindly like, kind of really links to her, and it's like she really gets a sense of Norma Jean as an artist, which I think is the highest compliment one artist can give another. Is like, you are an artist, and that's kind of striking in itself. So, I mean, we know the story does not end well, and the book, the novel says what we know. She's got 9 years left at this point. It makes a point of, you know, this train is not gonna end. It's not gonna end well, and it's that kind of that tragedy. But yeah, I can. It's a book that's written by a woman, very much a gothic woman. This isn't, it's she is someone who's Joyce Carol Oates, definitely somebody who's, you can see kind of is bloody and interested in the bloodiness and the violence and the ugliness, in a very kind of, lurid is the right word, but in a very striking kind of way. is not going to shy away from it. Um, is going to embrace that. This kind of shaded, light, fluffy book that I just listened to was just like, why am I reacting so poorly to this? Or, why is this like seems so light? And a part of the reason is it's living in the shadow of me reading Blonde by Joyce Carol Oates at the moment. So yeah, that's where I'm at with Blonde by Joyce Carol Oates in the hideous movie tie-in cover, which we should all hate. But because I get it on Kindle, I think when I bought it, it had its original, probably boring Canadian cover, but now it's got the equally terrible Netflix sticker on it right there, which is like, oh, Jesus Christ. I don't think that's Anna de Armas, though. I think that actually might be a picture of Marilyn Monroe. Uh, Norma Jean in her Marilyn Monroe disguise, in her creation. Who knows? Who knows who that is there? Who knows? Which is fitting in itself. All right, I'll leave it there. More videos later.